I never thought my 10-year-old Honda Civic would cause such drama at the annual Anderson family reunion. But then again, everything about me seemed to offend my husband's family's delicate sensibilities. The day started like any other awkward family gathering at the Anderson estate. David, my husband of 3 years, squeezed my hand as we pulled up to his parents' sprawling mansion in my trusty Honda. "Remember, it's just 6 hours," he whispered, trying to sound encouraging. "We can do this." I nodded, straightening my simple blue dress, another point of contention with the Anderson women, who treated every family event like a fashion show. Through the windshield, I could see Victoria, my sister-in-law, already nudging her mother and pointing at our car with an exaggerated grimace. "Oh look, Emily's still driving that. What do we call it?" "A vintage economy car." Victoria's voice carried across the circular driveway, perfectly pitched to ensure everyone arriving could hear. She stood next to her brand new Mercedes, strategically parked front and center. I took a deep breath, reminding myself why I kept my successful real estate development company private. David and I had agreed early in our relationship that we wanted to live simply, away from his family's materialistic influence. What they didn't know was that, while they flaunted their old money, I was quietly building an empire, one that had recently acquired the very building where both Victoria and my mother-in-law, Margaret, worked. "Emily, darling." Margaret's voice dripped with false sweetness as we approached. "We must discuss getting you a more appropriate vehicle. What will people think? The Andersons have a reputation to maintain." David started to speak, but I squeezed his hand. We'd been through this dance before. He wanted to reveal my success to shut them up, but I'd always held back. Today, though, something felt different. "I appreciate your concern, Margaret," I replied smoothly, "but I'm quite comfortable with my choices." Victoria snickered, linking arms with her mother. "Comfortable with mediocrity, she means. Remember when she suggested hosting Christmas at her tiny house?" The memory of that Christmas still stung. I'd spent weeks preparing, only to have Margaret and Victoria show up, take one look around my deliberately modest home, and declare it unsuitable for an Anderson gathering. They relocated the entire celebration to Margaret's house without even trying my carefully prepared dinner. As we moved toward the backyard, where caterers were setting up an elaborate spread, I couldn't help but notice the way other family members whispered behind their hands. The annual Anderson family reunion had always been more of a wealth showcase than a family gathering, with everyone trying to outdo each other with stories of their latest acquisitions and achievements. "David, sweetheart," Margaret called out, deliberately excluding me from the conversation. "Victoria's husband just made partner at Wellington and Reed. Isn't that where you're still just a senior associate? Perhaps if you hadn't been so distracted these past few years, you'd have made partner too." The implication was clear. I was the distraction, the reason David hadn't reached the heights his family expected. What Margaret didn't know was that David had actually turned down the partner offer, preferring to maintain a better work-life balance and support my growing business ventures. "Actually, Mom," David started, but Victoria interrupted with her characteristic squeal. "Oh my God, is that Uncle Robert pulling up in the new Bentley? Now that's an appropriate car for an Anderson." She shot me a pointed look. Some of us understand family standards. I watched as the family flocked around Uncle Robert's car, oohing and ahhing over its features. The irony wasn't lost on me. The building where he just leased an entire floor for his law firm was one of my recent acquisitions. As the afternoon wore on, the jabs became more frequent. Victoria's husband bragged about their recent Hamptons vacation. Margaret showcased her new tennis bracelet, and everyone seemed to have an opinion about my questionable lifestyle choices. "I just worry about your future," Margaret said, cornering me by the dessert table. "David's trust fund can only stretch so far if you insist on." "What do you call it?" "Making it on your own." She made air quotes with her perfectly manicured fingers. I was arranging a piece of chocolate cake on my plate. Another faux pas according to Victoria, who loudly proclaimed she never touched carbs when Margaret dropped her voice to a theatrical whisper. "You know, it's not too late for David to consider other options. The Prescott girl is back in town, and she comes from an excellent family, with proper connections." The fork in my hand trembled slightly. This was new. Usually, they just implied I wasn't good enough. Now Margaret was openly suggesting David leave me for someone more suitable. "Margaret," I said quietly, setting down my plate, "would you say your job at Wellington Tower is comfortable?" She blinked, thrown by the sudden change of subject. Well, yes, though I hardly see how that's relevant. The Wellington Building is the most prestigious address in the city. Victoria was so fortunate to get a position there too. And you both enjoy working there. Emily dear, she patted my arm condescendingly, when you've achieved a certain status in life, you understand the importance of prestigious locations. Not that I'd expect you to. Interesting you should mention that, I interrupted smoothly, because I've been meaning to tell you there are going to be some changes at Wellington Tower. Perhaps we should all meet there tomorrow morning, say 9 a.m. in the lobby. Margaret's perfectly plucked eyebrows drew together in confusion. Why would we possibly need to do that? Oh, I smiled, reaching for my car keys. I think you'll want to be there. In fact, why don't you bring a whole family? I have something rather interesting to show you. As David and I walked back to my Honda, Victoria's voice carried across the lawn one final time. Look at them leaving early in that embarrassing car. She can't even handle a full Anderson family gathering. David opened the car door for me, his eyes twinkling. Are you finally going to tell them? I started the engine, listening to its reliable purr. No, darling. Tomorrow, I'm going to show them. The next morning, I arrived at Wellington Tower 15 minutes early, parking my Honda in my reserved spot. The one marked owner that everyone assumed belonged to some mysterious investor. I'd never used it before, preferring to maintain my cover, but today was different. The lobby was already buzzing with early morning activity when the Andersons arrived in their luxury vehicles. Margaret and Victoria entered first, both wearing expressions that mixed annoyance with poorly concealed curiosity. David's father, Richard, followed with Uncle Robert, while various other family members who'd been at yesterday's reunion trickled in. Emily, Margaret's voice echoed across the marble lobby. I hope this isn't some sort of practical joke. We have very important meetings this morning. I stood calmly by the reception desk, wearing my cheap blue blazer that Victoria had once described as department store chic. The security guard, James, who had always played along with my desire for privacy, gave me a subtle wink. Good morning, Mrs. Anderson, James called out. Will you be joining Ms. Parker for the building tour? Margaret's head snapped around. Ms. Parker, you know Emily. Of course, James replied with practiced innocence. Everyone here knows Ms. Parker. Victoria stepped forward, her designer heels clicking on the marble floor. This is ridiculous. Emily, if this is some desperate attempt to prove something. I held up my hand, silencing her with a gesture that surprised even me. Before we begin, I should mention that the construction noise on floors 15 through 20 will continue for the next few weeks. We're renovating those levels for a new tenant. Richard Anderson spoke for the first time, his business instincts clearly picking up on something. Yes, I smiled, pressing the private elevator button with my key card. Shall we start the tour? I believe Victoria's office is on the 12th floor, and Margaret, yours is on the 14th, correct? The family shuffled into the elevator, confusion evident on their faces. As we ascended, I began my explanation. 3 years ago, when David and I got married, everyone assumed I was after the Anderson fortune. What nobody bothered to ask was why I chose to work in real estate development or why I kept such a low profile. The elevator stopped at the 12th floor. The doors opened to reveal workers replacing the old Harrison and Wells Law signage with new branding. Victoria gasped. What's happening to our office? Your firm's lease is being adjusted, I explained calmly. Don't worry, you're not being evicted. Just relocated to a more suitable space on the 3rd floor. The rent will be more appropriate for your company's current market position. You can't do that. Victoria sputtered. Who do you think you are? The elevator continued upward, stopping at the 14th floor where Margaret worked. Similar changes were underway there. Actually, I continued, as the owner of Wellington Tower and 6 other buildings in the business district, I can. And I should mention, the rent increases we discussed last month will be going into effect immediately. The silence in the elevator was deafening. Margaret's face had gone pale, while Richard Anderson was looking at me with new eyes. You own Wellington Tower? Uncle Robert finally asked, his legal mind probably already connecting the dots. Through Parker Development Group, yes, along with the majority of the commercial real estate in this area. I turned to Margaret. Including that prestigious address you're so proud of working at. The elevator continued to the top floor where my rarely used executive office was located. As we stepped out, Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a stunning view of the city, a city where I owned more property than the entire Anderson family combined. That's impossible, Victoria whispered. You drive a Honda. I drive a Honda because it's reliable, practical, and paid for, I corrected her. Just like I live in a modest house because I choose to, not because I have to. My company owns properties worth billions, but I've never felt the need to flaunt it. Margaret sank into one of the office chairs, her perfectly composed facade crumbling. All this time, I confirmed, while you were mocking my car, my house, my clothes, I was quietly building an empire. The same empire that owns the building where you work, the country club where you play tennis, and yes, even that prestigious Hamptons resort where Victoria loves to vacation. David, who had been quietly watching this unfold, finally spoke up. This is why I turned down the partner position, Mom. I've been helping Emily expand her business instead. Richard Anderson cleared his throat. Why tell us now? I walked to my desk, pulling out a stack of folders. Because yesterday at the reunion, Margaret suggested David would be better off with someone else. Someone more suitable. So I decided it was time to show you exactly who you've been looking down on these past 3 years. I began distributing the folders. Inside, you'll find updated lease agreements for all Anderson family businesses operating in my buildings. You'll notice the terms are fair. I'm not vindictive. But I do expect a certain level of professional courtesy from my tenants. Victoria opened her folder with trembling hands. These rates are actually below market value, I finished for her. Consider it a family discount. Though I should warn you, the discount is contingent on good behavior. The following week's Sunday dinner at the Anderson Mansion had a distinctly different atmosphere. My Honda was now parked between Victoria's Mercedes and Margaret's BMW, but no one made a single comment about it. Instead, an awkward silence filled the dining room as the family picked at their meals. The roast is lovely, Margaret, I offered, trying to ease the tension. She jumped slightly at being addressed, nearly spilling her wine. Thank you, Emily. Miss Parker. Emily is fine, I said softly. Nothing has changed. I'm still the same person I was last week. Victoria, who hadn't made eye contact with me since the Wellington Tower revelation, suddenly burst out. How can you say nothing's changed? You let us make fools of ourselves for 3 years. David set down his fork. No, Victoria, you made fools of yourselves. Emily never pretended to be anything she wasn't. You all just assumed. But the little house, the old car, the simple clothes, Margaret gestured helplessly at my outfit. Why live like that when you could afford so much more? I took a sip of water, considering my response carefully. Because worth isn't measured by what you own or what you show off. My parents taught me the value of hard work and humility. When I started my company, I promised myself I wouldn't become someone who needed external validation through material things. Richard Anderson, who had been unusually quiet since the revelation, cleared his throat. I've been doing some research on Parker Development Group. Your acquisition strategy over the past 5 years has been impressive. Thank you, I nodded. Though I suspect you're really wondering why I never mentioned it during all those family discussions about business and investments. He had the grace to look embarrassed. We never exactly gave you the chance, did we? The admission seemed to break something in Margaret. Tears welled in her eyes. All those horrible things I said. The way I treated you, suggesting David leave you. And all this time, you were more successful than any of us. Mom, David started, but I placed my hand on his arm. I never wanted to prove anything or hold power over anyone, I explained. I just wanted to be accepted for who I am, not for what I own. The fact that it took revealing my success to earn your respect actually makes me quite sad. Victoria dabbed at her eyes with her napkin. The new office on the 3rd floor, it's actually nicer than our old one. The lighting is better and the layout makes more sense. I know, I smiled. I designed it specifically for your firm's needs. Just like I made sure Uncle Robert's new lease included the extra storage space he needed. And the country club's renovation will add those tennis courts Margaret's been requesting. The room fell silent again, but this time it felt different, contemplative rather than awkward. I had a meeting with my board yesterday, Richard finally said. We're looking to expand our manufacturing division. I don't suppose Parker Development Group would be interested in a potential partnership. Before I could answer, Margaret burst out, Richard, After how we've treated Emily, you're trying to take advantage of her success." The sharp self-rebuke in Margaret's voice made me realize that perhaps real change was possible. "Actually," I said, pulling up some plans on my phone, "I've had my eye on the industrial park near the river. It would be perfect for what Anderson Manufacturing needs. I'd be happy to discuss a joint venture as equals." David squeezed my hand under the table, and I saw pride shining in his eyes. The rest of dinner passed with genuine business discussion, with both Richard and Uncle Robert treating me as a peer rather than just their nephew's wife. Victoria even asked for advice about her firm's expansion plans. As we were leaving, Margaret caught me by the door. "Emily, wait." She twisted her hands nervously. "That Christmas dinner you wanted to host, would you consider trying again this year? In your home, your real home, not what you thought we wanted to see." I thought about my comfortable house, chosen for its warmth rather than its size, filled with books and memories instead of expensive artwork. "I'd like that," I said, "but only if you promise to actually try my cooking this time." She nodded, tears threatening again. "And maybe you could teach me how to make that bourbon pecan pie you brought to Thanksgiving. The one I didn't even try." "I'd like that too," I smiled, heading toward my Honda. As David and I drove home, he asked, "Do you think they've really changed?" I considered the question carefully. I think they're trying. Sometimes people need a wake-up call to realize their values are misplaced. But true change takes time. And the manufacturing partnership with Dad is a good business decision. I finished. Personal feelings aside, it's a solid investment opportunity. Besides, I grinned, someone needs to teach your family the value of driving reliable cars. David laughed, then grew serious. "You know what I love most about you? Even after everything, you're still just you. Success hasn't changed who you are." I pulled into our driveway, looking at our modest but happy home. "Why would it? I have everything I need right here." And as we walked into our house, I knew that while the Andersons had finally seen my worth in terms they understood, the real victory was that I had never needed their validation to know my own value. The Honda would stay, the simple house would remain our home, and maybe, just maybe, the Andersons would learn that true worth isn't found in a price tag, but in the character of a person who never needed to prove anything to anyone.